it with cleared to play. We're going to take you inside the tent, get you updated on the latest injuries in the Bay. Proud to partner with UCSF Health on this segment and bring in Professor of Orthopedic Surgery, Dr. Nirav Pandya. Doc, what's going on? Glad to have you today.
I'm doing good. How are you guys doing?
We're great, although LaMonte Wade being out for 4 weeks is a bummer. Grade 2 hammy, what do you know?
Yeah, so typically with a grade 1 microscopic tear, very, very common. Grade 2 is a partial tear, so definitely a little bit more severe. Luckily, it doesn't sound like it's anything kind of higher up, which would be an even longer period of time out. So the fact that he's had this injury before, out 4 weeks, I mean, the biggest thing you get concerned about, because baseball players, is that you have about a 15 to 20% chance this could creep up again during the season. So the fact that it'll be back in 4 weeks obviously is a positive sign, but you do worry a little bit. Is this going to be something that lingers as the season goes on? Because it's just hard with baseball. You're starting, you're stopping, you're sitting in the outfield for a long period of time. It's just a setup for injuring that hamstring again and again.
What about the position of first base as it pertains to the hamstring? Because it looked like he might have tweaked it on a couple of those big stretches out to try to get the ball.
Yeah, that definitely puts more strain on it, because you imagine you're cold for a while, you're doing some stuff, and then suddenly out of nowhere, you've got this big, stretch out, and then that kind of will injure it as well, too. So, yeah, that kind of like big load on the hamstring can cause an area that maybe potentially was just a little bit kind of injured, kind of become a bigger issue. So any kind of overexertion, sprinting, stretching absolutely will cause that to become problematic.
Doc, Austin Slater has been cleared for some activity, but we also know concussions, right? There's some mystery there. Patrick Bailey just went through this. What are you looking for when you're coming off of a concussion and you resume activity?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is you're looking to make sure that there are those symptoms, whatever those symptoms may have been, and it's different for everyone, whether it's headaches, whether it's nausea, it's light sensitivity. You kind of slowly going through each activity progression and seeing, look, do those concussion symptoms come back? It's almost like a sore muscle, right? You kind of start slow, you start some jogging, you kind of start sprinting, and then, oh no, you have to stop because that muscle starts hurting again. Same thing with the brain. So if you're going through running, you're okay, but then suddenly you get up there to bat or you do something more explosive and those symptoms come back, you gotta hold people back a little bit. So it's really looking at what does this player need to do? What's the most intense thing he needs to do? And if they can do it, then you get them back. Now, obviously for a catcher, that could be a little bit longer period of time because there's much more kind of mental energy. You're kind of reacting a lot more quickly than, say, an outfielder or someone who's not constantly having to make decisions. So it definitely does vary from player to player, but you're looking for those recurrence of symptoms. That's really the key thing.
Michael Conforto getting close to coming back from his hamstring strain. What do we look for in terms of what he can do in the early days coming back off the IL?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing from his age, I think when you get over 25, 26, he's 31 right now, you really have to be good about, are there other injuries cropping up elsewhere? Like, is your calf a little bit sore? Is your back a little bit sore? And those could be secondary kind of compensation issues you're doing to compensate for that initial hamstring injury. So that's number one. And then number two, I think the one thing that we have shown with baseball players is that if you're taking even kind of almost load managing them, if you're playing multiple games back to back, you're playing more innings, you're having more plate appearances, that puts more strain on the hamstring and is associated with a greater risk of injury. So you might actually see him kind of being load managed a little bit just to make sure that doesn't get re-injured in these first couple weeks.
Doc Pandya with us, cleared to play. Hey, the Ronald Acuna thing caught our attention because it's the other ACL. Is there any tie between his previous ACL injury and this one?
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things we've found now that with the research, we've been really good about preventing re-tears. They're actually relatively rare in professional athletes, but your risk of re-injury, particularly for professional athletes, can potentially even be higher in that other knee. A lot of it has to do with the fact that you spend 9 to 12 months really rehabbing the right side, and then you develop some compensation. Your mechanics are off. You're just not the same on that other knee because you spent so much time on that original knee. So absolutely, particularly when you have a non-contact injury, that's what you see. 2 to 3 years later, that other side tears. And it's a problem. So we counsel a lot of patients, say, look, I know you've really, really worried about that one knee that you had surgery on, but you need to make sure you're doing the work on the other side because that knee may potentially be more at risk than your original surgery knee.
Doc, you're an actual doctor. I'm a wannabe radio doctor, but we had one that I was unfamiliar with, and hopefully your actual medical training will help me here as opposed to my radio training. Lonzo Ball getting a meniscus donor surgery? How common is that, and what the heck is going on there?
Yeah, so it's not super common, particularly in professional athletes. So you imagine you get meniscus surgery. If your meniscus kind of keeps getting cut out or it doesn't heal, meniscus doesn't regrow. So eventually what happens, that meniscus can't absorb shock, and then you're getting a lot of pain, swelling, and then the bone above and below starts wearing away as well, too. So one of the things you can do for people who don't have a lot of arthritis is you can actually get a cadaver meniscus from someone who's passed away. Basically what happens, you say you need it, you get an MRI, and then they basically have basically it's a bank where you have different menisci, and you basically match it. And then what they do is they actually transplant that meniscus in. It's not alive. And at the same time, what they'll sometimes do is kind of transplant cartilage of bone above and below to help prevent people from having pain. The key thing is this surgery is really to prevent you from getting a knee replacement and allow you to be kind of functional day to day. Very few professional athletes have ever gotten this done. So what it means for his knee moving forward, it'll be interesting to see, because that cadaver meniscus is good for living your life. It's not good for playing professional basketball. So it'll be interesting to see how his season ends up.
I will say this. I learn something most of the time when you come on. Today, it was that menisci is a word.
That's incredible.
It is.
Yeah.
More than one meniscus. There you go.
I would have gone with meniscuses. That's what I would have said, but not anymore. That's what I would have done until today. All right, Doc. Great. We'll talk to you next week.
All right. Sound good. Take care, guys.
Thanks, Doc.
You too. Yeah. Proceeding was sponsored by UCSF Health.
And I could